this side, yeah, please. No, no, please, please sit down. Vijay? Ah.
Excellency, thank you for your very excellent speech, but I missed one point. When you narrate the history of your parents and your journey to United States, you didn't tell the audience yet what happened between the meeting of viewers with Obama and Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh.
You know, I've told that story.
Please, then. And the second question which I asked you, what's going to be the future of the TPP when the new president comes?
Of the Trade-Pacific Partnership?
Trans-Pacific.
Trans-Pacific Partnership, sure. So I've told the story about my interaction with Prime Minister Singh and my dad's words so many times. Has everyone heard that story? But you can hear it again, yes. Okay. So as I mentioned in the remarks, my dad obviously very proud of our roots, and we would always joke growing up that he would find a connection to everyone we would meet in the United States who was Indian. And he would always say to us that we were from the same place or the same town or the same village or the same school, or your auntie's sister's best friend nephew is her cousin. You know, it didn't matter. I mean, no matter where we met somebody, he always found that connection. We're from the same place, we're from the same place. And we would joke after a while. You know, there's an interesting addition to this story, which some of you may not have heard. After my Senate confirmation hearing, it was chaired by Senator Kaine, who was on the ticket with Secretary Clinton. And Senator Kaine from Virginia came up to me and he said, you know, just explain one thing to me. He said, I know there's over 1 billion people in India, but sometimes I feel like there's only 150. And I said, why do you say that? He said, because every Indian person in Virginia knows every Indian person in the world. And I said, well, it's funny you should mention that because my dad has the same, you know, habit and same tendency to make all these connections. Anyway, fast forward to 2009 when I was Assistant Secretary of State. I got invited to go to the White House to meet the Prime Minister of India, and I called my dad. Very excited, very honored to have gotten this invitation. I thought he would be very proud. I said, Dad, I was invited to meet the Prime Minister of India. He said, that's really great. Son, you make sure you tell the Prime Minister we're from the same place. Right, so I said no. I said, can't do it. I don't want to lie. He called me the next day. He said, you're going to do this. I said, no. He called me the morning of the ceremony. I said no. And of course, I get to the White House. I'm waiting my turn in line. And the president introduces me to the Prime Minister. He says, Rich Verma. He's the Assistant Secretary of State. As I've often joked, I would say the president was relieved to see one Indian American in the line. I think he was happy to see me. Anyway, the Prime Minister looks at me. He says, you're Indian. I said, yes, sir, I'm Indian. Family is from India. He then asked me, he said, where's your father from? You know where this is going. And I said, my father's from Jalandhar in Punjab. Prime Minister turns to the president. He said, his father and I are from the same place. So yes, thank you. So look, TPP, I think, I can't speak for the new administration, but what I heard from both Republican and Democratic leaders was that they didn't want to completely give up on the notion of a trade pact in the Asia Pacific, but that they wanted to renegotiate certain elements of it that were better for working people. It remains to be seen what that renegotiation looks like and whether the group is even open to a renegotiation, so we'll have to see. I have believed, and I think the president was very convincing in this, that this would have been a big deal for the American economy. It would have been a big deal for the Asian Pacific economy as we bring down barriers and try to increase the flow of goods in a way that recognized our increased cooperation with our friends from South America to the Pacific to North America. You know, barriers are coming down, they're not going up. And so that's the momentum, what we were trying to take advantage of. Environmental standards are going up, they're not going down. Worker protection standards are going up, they're not going down. Intellectual property standards are going up, they're not going down. That's what the trade pact was about. So, you know, look, let's wait and see. I'm hopeful that some sort of trading agreement becomes possible. I don't think you can go out and do a dozen bilateral agreements. It doesn't result in the same kind of synergies. But that's why we have elections, and people have different visions, and we'll see what happens.
Yes.
Yes, so that was a great speech.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very inspirational. Of course, in the last 2 years, Indo-US relationship has gone to a completely new level. And both India and US together have tried to put pressure on Pakistan as far as all the terror havens and unfinished trials like 2611 are concerned. But we've not been very successful because all those terrorists we have been talking about in press conferences, they still move around freely in Pakistan. So, where do you think the problem lies and what can be done now in future?
Yeah, look, this is a very vexing problem. You know, the number one threat that confronts the United States, confronts India, frankly, confronts the people of Pakistan is terrorism. And it is a scourge that we have to stand up against collectively. No one nation can do this on its own. I will tell you, I'm very proud of the role that the United States has played in the last 16 years in leading a global effort against terrorism. Afghanistan, across the Middle East, globally, Northern Africa, and again, I would not take a back seat to anyone in the role that we've played, the sacrifice in blood and treasure that has gone into this fight. Now, obviously, the challenge of cross-border terrorism and the threat it presents to India has been a serious threat, and one that we have condemned, one that we've addressed in serious terms with the leaders of Pakistan to shut down the transit routes, to shut down the safe havens, to make sure that those who decide to turn to violence are held to account. And look, we have to continue to work at this. I will tell you that our security partnership with India has greatly enhanced. We share more intelligence now. There's greater cooperation between our law enforcement, between our militaries. And so this will require all elements of our national power, including countering extremist messages. You know, it's not just military tools, it's also, you know, as we say, draining the potential pools of recruits that are out there and vulnerable to these messages, and that requires economic, social, political tools to make sure that we're combating that side of it too. And so we're gonna have to keep at this, and but it's not for a lack of effort on anyone's part, I will assure you.
Sanjay, please take the microphone.
Thank you.
At the end of your speech, you mentioned about that America is not going to go away from following the old traditions, the traditions of openness, giving opportunities and welcoming people from different countries, different regions. But there's of course a strong fear in a country like India that with a new president in Trump, some of these old traditions might revisit some of these traditions, we might ignite certain forces which might oppose this openness. You have been beneficiaries. Sometimes this doubt also comes into your mind that why the United States, which nurtures people like you, has suddenly turned so nationalistic. You know, we also have a doubt when Modi became the Prime Minister, so some liberals there in India. And we were hoping that America probably would not make the same judgment, I would say mistake. Second question is...
Well, that was a hard question right there, so maybe we should stop.
It was coming into my mind, I couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
Second question is regarding Afghanistan, and of course, Russia is now, in a way, the way the popular narrative is going around, wants to take revenge on the US for its defeat in Afghanistan. A new game is starting there. Of course, Russia is aligning forces and taking advantage of US withdrawal from there, and they are ganging up forces which are opposed to the existing president there. In that situation, how the US is going to reposition itself, or do you think that the new president will focus there, or will do something where you don't have the great game again going around and coming to the same result? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me tackle the first question on the what you call traditions of openness or inclusiveness in the United States. You know, I would characterize it as these are fundamental core values of the United States that are reflected in law, in the Constitution, in our practices. So it's not just a matter of tradition, it's kind of what the country is built upon. So we have to think about what are the pressures upon the kind of open and free and diverse society that we have. If you go back to 2008, we had a great financial crisis, impacted people very hard. We've had massive globalization taking place at a speed that has really surprised people, surprised experts. We've had a lot of traditional manufacturing job loss in the United States. We've had the creation of new industries that didn't exist in the internet domain and digital domain and in clean energy. And we've had a lot of economic growth since then, but still people are feeling the pain of globalization. And I think it's not just in the United States. It's obviously across Europe and in other parts, in mainly developed countries. They're asking the question, what happened? And a lot of times when you ask that question, you look for a counter reaction. And I think what we have to guard against is that reaction is somehow directed against immigrants to the country or directed against people of goodwill. I have no debate with people who want to address this through economic means and through renegotiating trade agreements. Look, I told you, I grew up in the Rust Belt. I saw these jobs disappear. They disappeared in the 70s and 80s, and by the 90s they were gone. So, and I always had thought, why has America forgotten about this part of the world that produced the steel that's in the Golden Gate Bridge, that sent its sons off to World War I and World War II? So look, I'm a biggest advocate for people in the America's heartland, but I'm also a big advocate for living up to America's ideals and our values, and I don't think those are mutually inconsistent views at all. But I think we do have to acknowledge the economic reality, the kind of distrust of political institutions, and the fear that that's created, again, not only in people in the United States, but people globally. And that's something I think we all have to learn from and address without compromising our values. On Afghanistan, I don't see Afghanistan as any kind of proxy battle between the United States and Russia at all. And I view Afghanistan as a long and difficult campaign, and we have been proud to support the Afghan people, the Afghan National Security Forces, to have a country that can defend itself, a democratic country that is at peace, that is not used as a launching pad for terrorist attacks in any other country. And that's a long and difficult battle. And, you know, look, far from, you know, exiting the scene, we are there still in significant numbers. The commander of the international forces there is an American general who has been here into India several times. We'll continue to come back. But again, it's a challenge we're going to have to work together on. I see this as a challenge that we're going to have to ensure that the Afghans have the capabilities to defend themselves, and that's what we've been working on, and try to bolster their civil sector and their political capabilities. So I don't really see this as an outside third country coming in like Russia and trying to somehow damage what's been happening there.
Albin?
Most grateful for the very inspiring address, and I want to personally thank you for mentioning your mother and your grandmother. It gladdens the heart of every woman present over here, and the great role that women play in nurturing our spirits and psyches. My question is about young people and millennials, because we have 4 private universities, we have 25,000 students, and we do a program called Discover India, which is about young people mingling with other young people from other countries. It's a free of cost program to understand more about each other. The context for my question is, we recently had a Women Economic Forum in Santa Barbara, actually, at the very beautiful Baccarat Resorts.
Wow.
And we had young people from the University of Santa Barbara participating, and we had a panel with the millennials, and one of them said a very beautiful thing that stayed with me, and I'm thinking of how to actionize what he said. And he said, people keep referring to young people and millennials and saying, you are the leaders of the future. And we want to tell you where we are, where we discuss, when we talk, we really believe we are the leaders of the now and not of the future.
Right.
And that really stayed with me, because that panel was just so enlightening and engaging, and wish we could mainstream some of those millennial voices today. The question is, what role do you think young people, millennials, and our interaction between students here in India and the United States, what kind of formats that interaction and connection can take place to really mainstream the new voice of the millennials today in dealing with some of those challenges that Sanjay just mentioned?
Well, it's a really good question, and obviously, when we think about why we're so optimistic about India's role in the future, it's because of the incredible youth population you have here. 2/3 of the country is under the age of 35. I mean, it's remarkable about the promise that's here. And I will tell you, one of the great privileges I've had as ambassador has been to travel to all 29 states. 29 states in 25 months, which is a hard thing to achieve, but I was glad I did it. Every single place I went, I met with young people. And as I get older, boy, they seem much younger. But what an incredible pool of talent that is here, and they are excited about the future. And again, I think back to my parents growing up during, post-partition, and what a difficult time it was, what a conflict-laden time it was, uncertain. And now I think about the reason we think not only is this an Asian century, but an Indian century, is because of these young people. So what do we do about it, right? So you got to make sure there's educational opportunities and skill training. Now we're doing as much of that as we can in partnership with India. We've had the highest number of Indian students in the United States last year than ever before. Those numbers are going up. We have new programs on innovation and entrepreneurship, which are exactly, I think, what the young people are expert in. We have the Global Entrepreneurship Summit coming here to India. The young people are driving us, frankly, to think of new programs in clean energy, which they have been, grown up having a different view on what it's like to protect the planet. So we've got to tap in to their ingenuity and to their spirit. And when I think of what governments, what our role is, it's to identify those great leaders. It's to help facilitate a discussion from all segments of society, and then it's to, frankly, get out of the way and let them do some really great things. Let them have the opportunity to fail. Let them find the financing to pursue an idea. let them have a legal and regulatory system that protects their discoveries. So all these things go hand in hand, but I think you put your finger on exactly why people are so excited to be here and to think about what the future holds just a little ways down the road.
The gentleman sitting next to Douglas, and you come to the front and use the microphone to ask you a question. Thanks.
Hello, Mr. Master. Sunil from CNN. Can you shed some light on what lies ahead for India-US ties with Trump presidency taking over?
Yeah, I've talked, I can't really speak for the new administration. All I can say is that the relationship is on a very much an upward trajectory. We have made very substantial gains over the last 2 years. And we are joined together, as I mentioned, with these deep shared values. And that the US-India relationship in the United States is a bipartisan, I would almost say nonpartisan endeavor, supported widely. There are also 3.5 million Indian Americans that continue to pull both countries closer together. So I have a lot of reason to be optimistic. Obviously, the huge strategic importance and economic importance of India is obvious. I've gone through the record with many of you about breaking all of our records in trade and defense sales and education and consular issues. So, I think we've demonstrated to the people, again, when there's doubts about globalization and international contacts, that this is a relationship that really does help people. Creates more economic opportunity, creates a safer environment, creates more educational opportunities. So I'm laying all that out there to say this is a pretty obvious case of one where I think the president would want to take it and run with it. But I can't speak for him. I'm just personally optimistic about not only where we've been, but where I think our leaders would like to go with this relationship.
There is another Indian American in the audience, he's a member of AFCAB, he lives in Los Angeles. He's here at the moment, Manish Gupta.
Pastor, good to see you here. I have vested interest, so if I spoke, people might think, if I spoke, people might think that I was praising this relationship, but I think you hit the nail on the head by saying, and I would tomorrow during the color commentary on the inauguration, but I think the India-US relationship is pretty much on a path and a trajectory. And I think, and do you see evidence in the kind of appointments that we already see coming in the Trump administration with the Indian Americans in Congress, the larger representation, and the early appointments that are coming in, that this all signals probably a positive note versus what probably has been out there in terms of speculation?
Yeah, let me just say one thing about the path that we're on, because I think, as optimistic as I am, I don't want us to be complacent as well. And when I think about how we got to where we are, especially over the last 2 years, it hasn't just been a stroll down the park lane. We've had to really resolve some tough issues in trade, on civil nuclear liability, on defense logistics agreement, at the Paris climate talks. I mean, this takes a lot of work and a lot of tending to it. The reason I mentioned the 40 government-to-government dialogues is because that's where we solve problems. We didn't have those before. So we've got to keep working at this. It takes a lot of just rolling up your shirt sleeves and sitting down across the table. But again, another big difference is that we want to get to a solution now. So on the appointments, I think we'll just have to, I don't want to comment on particular individuals. I just know that there's a lot of goodwill for this relationship. And again, I've mentioned this before, you look at the largest House caucus in the House of Representatives, It's the U.S. India Caucus, 300 plus members. There's not a single issue in America that brings 300 members of the House of Representatives together. So that's a pretty good sign. On the Indian Americans that were elected to Congress, I started as an intern in the House of Representatives when I was 18 years old. I can count on one hand the number of people that looked like me in the House and the Senate. To now have 5 elected members of Congress, boy, that's a big deal. That is a really big deal. And I'm sure they all defied their parents' wishes to go to medical school, and they ended up in politics, and that's a good thing and a good development, and we're really proud of them.
We made you stand for 55 minutes, and so thanks very much. You can come and sit now.
Thank you.